but I had no clue that they were building the largest obstacle course in history. In May of 2017, I got an email on my Instagram from a producer from Netflix. And they were like, hey, are you interested in doing a really cool car show? And I had no clue if this was real or not. So I'm sitting there just like trying to Google who this person is. And I'm like, they really do work for Netflix. So I kind of said, I'm definitely interested. And they asked me to make an audition video. So I made a really cool video. I had a really nice purple Viper ACR at the time. So this thing just would do donuts like in 2 seconds, no issues. I'm driving it around, doing this great video. Send it to them. They love it. They tell me, hey, we want you on this show. And I was like, awesome. When are we going to film it? And at the time, they didn't know. So they said it could be in a week, could be in a month, could be in 6 months, could be in a year. So I told her I don't really keep my cars that long, but I'll keep it as long as I can. Fast forward 3 months, we didn't film. 6 months, didn't film. A whole year goes by. Finally, they tell me, we're ready to film. Can you be in New York in a month? And I'm like, of course I can. That week, we were going to a track day with a friend of ours in Michigan. And I kind of was a little hesitant on driving the car because it was going to rain. So I kept telling him, hey, I don't want to drive the car. It's going to rain. He's like, I promise you, you'll be fine. It's a few hours away from Chicago. Just come on out. Midnight, I start heading out there to get there first thing in the morning. About 3 hours in, we're 45 minutes away from Detroit. We go through a really bad storm, and unfortunately, the car just started hydroplaning, and I hit a wall. So I'm sitting on the side of the road at 3 in the morning, texting my friend, saying, this is what you made me do. And he's like, I'm so sorry, So by the time we got to the hotel and the car got towed, I just was in like an utter mess because I'm like, why am I doing this? And I'm thinking, what am I going to tell the producers of the show? There's no way this car is not totaled. The whole front was destroyed. I sent an email out and I'm like, hey, just so you guys know, we have a little bit of a dilemma. And they were like, what's the dilemma? And I said, the Viper's wrecked. And they were like, okay, get another one. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. This is not a car that I could just find really quickly. These are ACR Extremes. They only made a few hundred of them at the time. And at this moment in time, they already stopped production on them. And they were like, well, can you find another purple one? Or find a different color one and wrap it purple. And I was like, I'll see what I can do. So a week goes by and I couldn't find a Viper. I'm going back and forth with my insurance at the time. So I'm telling them, I'm like, I have to see what my insurance is going to do, if they're going to total this car, if they're not going to total it. So they're kind of putting pressure on me saying, you need to have a car for this TV show. At that exact moment, I started calling all my friends who had cool cars. And a good friend of mine named Wayland had a AMG GTS that we already converted to a wide body. So it looked cool. It kind of gave that look that the TV show was wanting, which is a race car look, but it needed a little bit more. So I negotiated a deal with him and I sell him a different Viper that I was going to buy as well. But the TV show fell in love with the Mercedes. They said, this thing looks exactly like what we'd want on the show. We bring it back to Fluid Motor Union and I tell them, all right, here's the car and we have to make it race ready in less than 30 days. How do you expect me to turn this into a race car? And I was like, well, do whatever you can. So Netflix sends out pretty much guidelines of what they want. And at the time, I didn't realize they wanted a full race roll cage in there. They wanted full race seats in there. They told me to put a drift brake in it. I mean, they wanted me to go all out and turn a Mercedes AMG GTS into a full-blown race car that can drift, which I'm not a drifter. So at the time, I'm like, okay, well, just do it. And I didn't know that these cars with the computers are not made to do this kind of stuff. So OJ's working his magic, getting it all ready to go. We're just going problem after problem trying to get this car ready. And the clock is ticking, right? A week goes by, 2 weeks goes by, 3 weeks goes by, and they're like, hey, we need you here on Tuesday. This is on a Friday. The giant wing just got there. OJ was welding these huge supports to hold a 6-foot wing on the back of this Mercedes. And so he's doing that while his guys are welding the interior. So I've never seen that car look like that, or any car look like that. The whole interior is ripped out and they're just welding in this beautiful $150,000 Mercedes. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And so as they're kind of getting it together, it just kind of coming into play. It's Monday now. We have to leave on Tuesday. We have less than 24 hours to be in New York. I was told the car would be ready at 7 p.m. on that Monday night. So I'm like, okay, not an issue. I'll be there. 7 p.m. I get there. It wasn't ready. So I stayed there all night and we're working on this thing and I'm doing whatever I can. I don't know how to weld or anything like that. So I'm holding what I can and just doing whatever I can so they can get this in there. And at that exact moment, we're working on putting this drift brake in because we had to overnight the parts and they're hooking it up to the lines. But with the hydraulic brake and the way that ABS system is hooked up on there, it didn't work well. So as you would pull the brake, we would lose all the other brakes and it would take a minute before the fluid would get back in there. So at that moment, we knew that that drift brake wasn't going to work well, but we had no choice. It was still in there. And at this point, it's 4:30 in the morning. And we're just up all night. He is just a zombie at this moment. I'm looking at him. I'm hoping he doesn't get hurt. So he's cutting his hands and, stuff's going like that because he's playing with all this metal. And I'm like, the last thing I want him to do is lose a finger right now, a few hours before I have to be in New York. Finally, he gets it together. The drift brake wasn't working. We knew it wasn't working. But he said, hey, just go do what you got to do. So we throw the car in a trailer. This is 6:30 in the morning. We have our RV. We have our truck. We have this giant trailer. And I'm driving the RV, which I've never driven for more than a few hours before. And I have to drive to New York after being up for 24 hours. I've been up since 7 o'clock that morning, and this is now 7 o'clock the next day. So I've been up for a full 24 hours, no sleep. But I had so much adrenaline in me because I wanted to get to New York. I was so excited about this. I had no clue what the show was about. They didn't tell us anything. At this point, it was kind of a surprise for us. We're like, what are we going to be doing? Who are we going to be competing against? Where is it even, right? So we just had an address. And so I start driving to New York, finally get there at 7, 8 p.m. at night. It's a 12, 13-hour drive. We pull into the lot, unload the car, and at this point, we were just in awe of what this set looked like. We were at this factory that was amazing, and there's these cool lights everywhere. I'm like, this is real. And at that moment, I knew it was like, I should have been practicing driving in this car. They kept asking, what kind of racing do you do? And in my head, I'm like, I don't really race, but I've been to the track a few times and I've driven multiple supercars. I'm like, how hard can this be? There's no way that it could be any more difficult than a normal road course or an autocross track. But I had no clue that they were building the largest obstacle course in history for Netflix. And they were pretty much expecting people to, drive these cars and do these stunts that you see on TV and movies in one take and hopefully not crash. Most of these guys are professional race car drivers or they're professional drifters. This is what they do for a living. So they're used to doing tandems and sliding their cars and they know every inch of their car. Well, supercar owners and drivers, we don't drive cars like that. You're not trying to maneuver your car, kick the back end and tap a wall. Your whole goal is just go fast in a straight line or have a couple nice curves. But at the end of the day, you're never trying to push the car to the full limits they wanted you to. So after we pull into this lot and we unload our car, they tell us where our designated area is, right? And they're like, okay, we only have enough space for your car and a small tent. But we have this giant RV, we have a truck and trailer, and we brought this really cool little Can-Am ATV with us, right? So I'm thinking I'm going to ride this thing around set, and first thing they tell me is, that's staying in the trailer, do not take that out, we don't have the insurance for it. So I leave that in there, I'm like, okay. And we kind of convinced them to give us enough space to park our truck and trailer, our RV, and then I have my friend Jordan Martin with us too, that I originally got him to come on the show too, because I was like, hey, my friend has a Lamborghini, he'll do what I do. And he had no clue what we were doing either. So he parks his truck and trailer, and we have our two cars, and everybody's coming around us, looking at our cars, like, man, you guys brought a Lamborghini here, and you guys brought this Mercedes AMG wide body, like, this is insane. And I'm like, all right, let's go look at some cars. So we start walking around, and I noticed that there was kind of different country flags everywhere, right? And I'm like, okay, so these are different countries. And they didn't tell us that people were coming from all over the world. They just kind of said, hey, be here and bring your car, and we'll see you then. As I'm walking around, I'm looking at these cars, and I'm seeing, like, these are full-blown race cars. They're drift cars. Some of them are super cool. Some of them are, I'm like, what is that thing, because I've never seen anything like that. I'm going through, and I'm talking to all the guys, and everybody's super nice. Some of them don't speak English, right? I would say half of those guys didn't, they had to have a translator with them. So I'm trying to communicate with them, and there's not really much communication. We can, we have car talk. So we're just like, okay, hey, nice, and we look at each other's engines and their tires and whatever they got, because they have stacks of tires and wheels behind them. I'm like, I only have an extra set of wheels with me that I had my friend from B-Forge build, and they're just nice 21-inch, nice looking wheels. They're not made for this stuff. And these guys are like, man, those wheels cost more than my car. At this moment, I kind of realized that I might have lied a little bit on the job application by saying that I was a drifter or a race car driver, or I've done all these events. But at the time, I didn't really care, because I really wanted to just go out and drive and race, and I love doing stuff like this. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, well, all I have to hope is that, one, I don't crash my car. Two, I hope that I can at least compete with these people. And three, I hope that they don't kick me off the show because they realize I'm not qualified to drive the way those guys are. They brought us in these coned off areas because they don't want us to hit the obstacles. And they're like, that's a metal wall. Try not to hit that. Act like the cones is the wall. So you'd come around and you're knocking down cones. I'm just hitting cones left and right. And the guy's like, this is why we're doing this. And he's like, have you ever done this before? I'm like, no. And at the time, he's like, use that brake. I'm like, it doesn't work. He's like, what the hell is it doing in there? So you'd pull this brake, and what would happen is it wouldn't, when you pull a drift brake, it locks the rear wheels, right? So it spins the back of the car, so it just slides it. Well, when I'd pull that drift brake, what it would do is it would just put pressure on all four wheels, so it would just slow me down. So when I'd pull it, it would just slow the car down. So I just stopped touching it. And Mercedes has all these crazy controls. You can put it in race mode. You can take the traction control off. It still has computer features that are going crazy. So as I'm trying to learn to slide this car, I mean, anybody can do a donut in a car, right? But remember, we're doing this in a dual clutch, automatic Mercedes that has a lot of torque, a lot of power, and this thing's all built. It's all Wisetack, so it has 750 horsepower. You can only spin it for too long, and then the car just the turbos kind of drop, and you can't keep it in full boost the whole time, right? So as I'm practicing going around these cones, I start feeling the front of my car feel really weird, and I didn't understand what was happening. My power steering was overheating because that car, I'm clocked all the way, I'm turned all the way, and I didn't realize that you shouldn't ever pull that steering wheel all the way to that last point and then gas it, because all I was doing was putting pressure on that power steering pump. So all of a sudden, I lose all my power steering. I can't do anything. My car shuts down. I let it sit for a little bit. Everybody's like, oh, you're just overheating your power steering fluid. Shouldn't be an issue. I didn't realize that I was blowing my pump. And then also, by blowing the pump, it was blowing the rack. So as I'm doing this, the first day during practice, I blow the pump. Nobody had the power steering pump. So I had my assistant at the time, James, go to our dealership, take a Mercedes, take it to Fluid Motor Union, let him rip out a power steering pump out of that car. Fastest way to get it there in the morning was to fly James out with the power steering pump. So James comes in here holding a bag full of fluid and pretty much looks like he was a heart transplant, and he gets to New York. We put the power steering pump in the car thinking that was going to fix it. Well, we didn't realize the rack was out at that point. And I'm trying to get Mercedes to warranty the car at this time. And I pull up in there and there's cameras stuck in the car and there's roll cage and stickers all over the car. And I pull up at the Mercedes dealer and they're like, we have an issue. I'm like, well, what's the issue? They're like, this car's blacklisted. We can't work on it anymore. I'm like, why? And they're like, somebody took a picture that was there, sent it to Mercedes headquarters. And they were like, hey, this car's a race car. Don't warranty it. So one of the guys that worked for Mercedes just wanted to be all the time, and he pretty much made me pay $7,500 out of pocket to put a new power steering rack in the car. So I would say by getting the car ready for the show, getting the extra set of wheels, extra tires, all the modifications, getting the car there and being there for 30 days, I would say it cost me over $40,000 to do this show. And at the time I was like, who cares? I really wanted to do it. And I really wish I had the Viper at the time, because I know that it would have been just a better built car for it. It was 6-speed, rear-wheel drive, no nanny stuff. That thing just wants to go, and you could spin it really easily. But I had to do what I had to work what I had, and that was at Mercedes. And I did well. I wouldn't say I was the best driver there, but I definitely wasn't the worst. So you ever have a job application and you're like, oh, Photoshop skills, Microsoft Word, all that stuff. And you're like, yes, I know how to do all that. Then you get the job and you get to work that day and they ask you to do that and you don't know how to do that. I'm like, that's exactly what this was like.